My wife looked me in the eyes and said, "It's your fault I'm unhappy." I didn't argue or beg. I agreed and walked away. What happened after I left changed everything I believed about love, marriage, self-respect, and the quiet power of choosing yourself. We had been married for 8 years when she said it. 8 years of routines, compromises, and conversations that slowly turned into silence. From the outside, we looked fine, good, even, decent house, stable jobs, weekend plans, smiling photos. But inside our home, something had been rotting for a long time. I met Laura when I was 27. She was funny in an effortless way, sharp, confident, the kind of woman who made you feel chosen just by standing next to you. Our relationship moved fast, but it felt right. We talked about everything back then: dreams, fears, the future. She used to say, "I feel safe with you." I held on to that sentence for years. The first cracks appeared after we got married. Small things. She started criticizing how I dressed, how I talked to people, how I spent my free time. "You're too comfortable," she'd say. "You don't push yourself." I thought she was helping me grow, so I tried harder. When she complained about money, I picked up extra work. When she said I wasn't ambitious enough, I enrolled in night classes. When she said I wasn't romantic anymore, I planned trips and surprises. Nothing ever stuck. The goalposts kept moving, and slowly, without realizing it, my life became a constant audition. I was always trying to be enough for a woman who had already decided I wasn't. The night she said those words started like any other Tuesday. I came home late from work, exhausted. The house was quiet except for the TV. Laura was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen but clearly not watching. I knew that posture. "We need to talk," she said without looking at me. My stomach tightened. I sat across from her. "Okay," she sighed, long and heavy, like she'd been carrying this burden alone. "I'm not happy," she said. I waited. I'd learned not to interrupt. "I feel stuck. I feel like my life isn't what it should be. And honestly," she finally looked at me then, "it's because of you." There it was. I felt the words hit my chest, not sharp, but dull, like a slow bruise. "How?" I asked quietly. She laughed, not cruelly, just tired. "Because you don't inspire me. You don't challenge me. I see other couples, and the men are leaders, driven, passionate, and you're just here." Just here. I wanted to tell her everything I'd done. The hours, the sacrifices, the parts of myself I'd trimmed away to fit into her expectations. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, "So what do you want?" She hesitated. That pause told me more than her words ever could. "I don't know," she said. "I just know I'm unhappy. And I can't keep pretending it's not because of you." That's when something clicked. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. I realized I had been living my life as a solution to her dissatisfaction. And even if I turned myself inside out, it would never be enough, because her unhappiness didn't start with me. It just landed on me. I stood up. She looked surprised. "Where are you going?" I took a breath. "To pack a bag." Her eyes widened. "Wait, what? You're just going to leave?" I nodded. "You're right. You're unhappy. And maybe I am part of that. So I'm removing myself from the equation." She stood now, panic flickering across her face. "I didn't mean like this. I just wanted you to understand." "I do," I said calmly. "More than you think." I packed that night in silence. Clothes, laptop, a few books. My hands were steady, which scared me more than if they'd been shaking. She hovered in the doorway. "So that's it? You're giving up?" I looked at her then. Really looked. "No," I said. "I'm finally choosing myself." I left with a duffel bag and no plan. That first night alone was brutal. I slept on my brother's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage, wondering where I went wrong, wondering if I should have fought harder. Maybe she's right, I thought. Maybe I am the problem. But then something else crept in. Relief. Not tension. No walking on eggshells. No silent disappointment filling the room. Just quiet. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics. Lawyers. Paperwork. Awkward conversations with friends who never saw it coming. Laura texted me often, sometimes apologetic, sometimes angry, sometimes nostalgic. One message stood out. "I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought you'd try harder." I stared at that sentence for a long time, and that's when I realized something important. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a project, and for the first time, I refused the role. I didn't reply to her message right away. "I thought you'd try harder." That sentence kept echoing in my head. Not because it hurt, but because it explained everything. For years, I thought love meant effort without limits, that if I just gave more, bent more, became more, things would finally feel balanced. But reading that text, I realized she never expected me to be happy. She expected me to keep proving myself. I typed a dozen responses, deleted all of them. In the end, I wrote nothing. Silence felt like the most honest answer. A week after I left, Laura asked to meet, just to talk, she said. We met at a small cafe we used to love. Neutral ground. No memories on the walls. She arrived early, already seated, scrolling on her phone. She looked the same, but something felt different, less confident, less in control. You look good, she said as I sat down. So do you, I replied. Polite, distant. She jumped right in. I've been thinking a lot. I didn't mean what I said the way it came out. I nodded slowly. But you did mean it. She hesitated. I was frustrated. You were honest, I said. And I'm grateful for that. Her eyes narrowed. You're acting like you've already moved on. I have, I said softly. At least from trying to fix something that was breaking me. She leaned forward. You're really just okay with throwing away 8 years? I felt a flash of something then. Not anger, sadness. I didn't throw it away. I carried it for a long time. Alone. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. That silence told me everything. A few days later, a mutual friend called me. I didn't know if I should say anything, he said, but Laura's been spending a lot of time with Mark. From her office. My chest tightened, not with jealousy, but recognition. How long? I asked. He exhaled. A while. Even before you left. I thanked him and hung up. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand explanations. Because suddenly, all the missing pieces fell into place. The criticism, the comparisons, the way she'd talk about other men without naming names. She wasn't unhappy because of me. She was already halfway gone and needed someone to blame for it. That night, she texted again. I feel like you're punishing me by disappearing. I stared at my phone and finally replied. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. She didn't respond. The divorce moved faster after that. Fewer arguments, fewer emotional conversations, almost clinical. Like two people quietly acknowledging something had ended long before the paperwork. But the real turning point came when she showed up unannounced at my brother's place. It was late, rain pouring. She looked desperate. I messed up, she said the moment I opened the door. I didn't invite her in. She took a shaky breath. I thought leaving would make me feel free, but I just feel empty. I crossed my arms. What do you want from me, Laura? She looked up, eyes glossy. I want us back. I want you to fight for me. There it was again. Fight for me. I shook my head slowly. I've been fighting for you for years. You just didn't notice because it wasn't dramatic. She stepped closer. I was confused. I didn't know what I had. I met her gaze. And I finally know what I lost. Her face crumpled. So that's it? I nodded. That's it. She stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked away into the rain. I closed the door and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. In the months that followed, my life got quieter but fuller. I stopped living for approval, stopped measuring my worth by someone else's satisfaction. I went to the gym not to impress anyone, but because it cleared my head. I reconnected with friends I'd slowly drifted from. I laughed more, slept better, and slowly, the version of me I'd lost started coming back. One night, as I was unpacking boxes in my new apartment, I found an old photo of us, smiling, happy, or at least trying to be. I didn't feel angry. I felt grateful, because if she hadn't said those words, if she hadn't blamed me for her unhappiness, I might still be shrinking myself to fit a role I was never meant to play. Sometimes the cruelest honesty is also the greatest gift. I didn't start dating right away. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't lonely inside my own head. I wanted to understand that feeling before I shared it with anyone else. The quiet became my teacher. I learned how much of myself I'd abandoned without noticing. The music I stopped listening to because she said it was noise. The clothes I stopped wearing because they were immature. Even the way I laughed somewhere along the way, I'd learned to keep it contained. I was becoming myself again. Slowly. Intentionally. Then, about 6 months after the separation, Laura reached out one last time. Can we talk? She wrote. I think I owe you an apology. I stared at the message longer than I expected to. Do I need this? I asked myself. The answer surprised me. Yes. Not for her. For me. We met at a park this time. Open air. Daylight. No corners for old ghosts to hide. She looked different. Not worse. Just smaller. like someone who'd run out of certainty. "I've been going to therapy," she said almost immediately. "I've realized I projected a lot onto you." I nodded. "I'm glad you're working on yourself." She swallowed. "I blamed you because it was easier than admitting I didn't know who I was." That stung, but it also healed something. "I loved you," she continued, "but I didn't respect you, and I'm sorry. I let that sit between us." "I accept your apology," I said, "but we're still not getting back together." She gave a sad smile. "I didn't expect that. I just needed to say it." We stood to leave. As we walked in opposite directions, she stopped. "You seem different." "I am," I said. "I finally stopped trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see me." She nodded, eyes wet. "I hope you find someone who does." "I already did," I replied gently. She didn't ask who. About a year later, I ran into Mark, the guy from her office, at a mutual friends gathering. Awkward didn't begin to cover it. He pulled me aside. "I just want you to know, nothing worked out. She was always unhappy, always searching. I felt no satisfaction, no victory, just confirmation. She needs to find that within herself," I said. "It was never about either of us." He looked relieved, maybe even warned. The real revenge, if you can call it that, was invisible. It was waking up without dread. It was coming home to a space that felt like mine. It was realizing my worth didn't require constant validation. I started dating eventually. Not to fill a void, but to share a life I was already enjoying. And the difference was night and day. No comparison, no moving goalposts, no silent punishments, just mutual effort, mutual respect. One night, my new partner looked at me and said, "I feel safe with you." The same words Laura once used. But this time, they didn't feel like a responsibility. They felt like a gift. Looking back, I don't hate my ex-wife. She showed me something crucial. That love without respect will slowly erase you. That being blamed for someone else's emptiness is not a failure, it's a warning. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is agree and walk away. She said it was my fault she was unhappy. I agreed, and leaving was the best decision I ever made. Sometimes closure isn't peace, it's distance. I used to think closure was a conversation, an apology, an explanation, a final moment where everything made sense. But closure didn't come with Laura's apology. It didn't come when Mark admitted things failed. It came on a random Wednesday night, a year and a half after I left, while I was doing laundry in my apartment. I was folding a shirt I actually liked, and it hit me. No one had criticized me in months. Not my taste, not my pace, not my dreams. I stood there, holding that shirt, and laughed quietly to myself. This is it, I thought. This is what peace feels like. There was a time when I replayed our marriage like a crime scene, looking for evidence of where it all went wrong. I zoomed in on every argument, every silence, every look she gave me when she was already somewhere else. But eventually, I stopped asking, "What did I do wrong?" and started asking a better question. Why did I stay? That answer wasn't flattering. I stayed because I was afraid of being alone, because I thought endurance was the same as love, because part of me believed that if I could just be better, I'd finally earn rest. That belief didn't come from Laura. She just benefited from it. The more distance I got, the more patterns I started seeing. How she'd bring up other men during arguments. How praise was always followed by a but. How my success somehow made her feel smaller. She once told me, "You're at your best when you're trying to prove something." I remember laughing at the time. Now I understand how revealing that was. About 2 years after the divorce, I ran into her sister at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure whether to say hello. "I've been wanting to talk to you," she said finally. We stood between the produce and the dairy aisle. "She's not doing great," her sister admitted. "She jumps from thing to thing, job ideas, relationships, always chasing something." I nodded. "I hope she finds what she's looking for." Her sister studied my face. "You seem happier than I've ever seen you." I smiled. "I am, and I meant it. Not because my life was perfect, but because it was honest." I stopped measuring my progress in milestones. No, I should be here by now. No comparing my life to anyone else's. Just forward motion. Some days were still hard. There were nights when old doubts crept in, when I wondered if I was too passive, too calm, too easy to leave. But then I'd remember something my therapist once said. "You weren't abandoned, you were released." That sentence rewired something in me. One evening, while cleaning out old emails, I found a draft I'd written years ago, never sent. addressed to Laura. It was full of apologies for not being enough, for disappointing her, for not making her happy. I read it once, then I deleted it, not out of anger, out of respect for the man I am now. The strangest part about all of this is how quiet growth is. There was no dramatic revenge, no big reveal, no moment where she begged and I triumphed. Just time doing what time does best, telling the truth. People noticed the change before I did. You seem grounded, friends would say. You're different in a good way. I wasn't louder. I wasn't tougher. I was clearer. One night, my partner asked me something unexpected. Do you ever regret leaving? I thought about it carefully, about the house we shared, the routines, the version of myself that tried so hard to be chosen. No, I said, but I regret staying as long as I did. She squeezed my hand. No judgment, just understanding. That's when I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I don't tell this story to paint myself as a hero. I wasn't brave at first. I wasn't wise. I was just tired. Tired enough to stop explaining myself to someone who had already made up their mind about who I was. And sometimes, that's enough. The last time I heard her voice was through a voicemail I almost deleted. It came late at night. Unknown number. I let it ring out of habit. Something told me to listen before erasing it. Her voice sounded older. Not in years, but in weight. I just wanted to say, I get it now, she said. I spent so long running from myself that I blamed you for standing still. I hope you're happy. There was a pause, a breath. I really do. The message ended. I didn't call back. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted the upper hand, but because that chapter had finally closed on its own. There's a strange moment that comes after healing. Not joy, not sadness. Acceptance. It's when you stop replaying conversations in your head. When their name stops tightening your chest. When you can remember the good without wanting it back. That's when you know you're free. I used to think strength was staying, enduring, proving loyalty through pain. Now I know better. Strength is leaving when love turns into a performance review. Strength is walking away when your worth becomes conditional. Strength is agreeing when someone says you're the reason they're unhappy and refusing to stay and be punished for it. Sometimes people ask me if I believe in karma. I do, but not in the dramatic way movies show it. Karma isn't revenge. It's alignment. You end up exactly where your choices lead you. She kept chasing fulfillment outside herself. I finally looked inward, and our paths went where they were always headed. The house I live in now isn't big, but every room feels like it belongs to me. My laugh fills the space. My music plays without apology. My choices don't need defending. And in that freedom, I found something I never had before. Self-respect. If you're reading this and you've been told you're not enough by someone you're bending yourself to, please listen carefully. Love isn't supposed to make you disappear. Commitment isn't supposed to feel like a debt. And being blamed for someone else's unhappiness is not a verdict, it's a warning sign. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't anger, it's agreement. She said, "It's your fault I'm unhappy." I agreed. And then I left, not to punish her, not to prove anything, but to save myself. I didn't lose my wife that day. I found my life.